I'm going to share with you a concept, and this will be the one concept that I share with you, and then I'm going to tell you the surprise that I have waiting for you. This concept will help you in love. It will help you in business. It'll help you in your entire life, and it's a great, important concept. When God created the world, it says in the Torah, He made light. And then if you look carefully, it looks like He made a second light. The Midrash tells us that that first light was created, but it was the kind of light that we could not use. It was so penetrating. It was so bright. It was so awesome. It was almost scary. It was not the kind of light that we were able to use. And therefore, God removed that light and put in its place a second light. And that second light was not as bright, not as beautiful, but that second light lasts. First light created, and if you like science, again, where's my Maggie? Right? So we got light waves. We know there's a lot of light, most of it that we've got very little access to. We have a very, very short spectrum that we can see. But we know there's way more light out there, some which is dangerous, some which is micro, some which is macro, some which is very far apart, the waves, right? So there is light out there that animals could see that we can't see. There is light out there that's bright, and it was too bright for mankind. So God removes that light, and in its place puts a much more calm light. And that calm light was not as bright, but it's the light that lasts, that we use. And from there came the pattern called first light, second light. And everything from the beginning of creation started using this pattern of first light, second light. And here's how it works. First light, big, bright, beautiful, doesn't last. Second light, not so bright, maybe not so glamorous, but much more calm, and it could last forever. Let me give you an example of first light, second light. You go on a date, and it's your first time meeting this person. Maybe it's a blind date, I don't know. And they're gorgeous, they're stunning, they're so beautiful, you actually got nervous. Did you ever that happen? Someone's so striking, like you're not yourself. For a little bit, you're not yourself. It's a bright light, and you fall head over heels over this guy or over this girl, and you're so excited. But that excitement, as time goes on, and let's say you go out with them, and you go out for a while, and eventually you marry them, what happens to that light? Does it last? Are you always going to be shaking from their beauty? Nah. It's going to disappear. It's going to disappear. That light will not last. That light, you don't even want it to last. Interestingly enough, Hollywood, whenever it shows the happily ever after, they show the first light happily ever after. But anyone who is married, and God willing, you'll all be married to wonderful, wonderful people, amen, you will see that that light is unsustainable, and you can't even deal with that light. Would you like somebody who's so in love with you that it's stifling?
No, because you can't be productive.
You can't. After I got married, I found a notebook that belonged to my wife, and the notebook belonged to her before she was married, and I saw that in that notebook she took a pen and she wrote my name thousands of times in little hearts. She doesn't do that anymore. Then you get married and first light disappears. But just because it disappears, that doesn't mean that you can't love that person. But the love will take place in a different manner. It's going to be second light love. And second light love is not as bright, it's not as beautiful perhaps, but it's got other advantages. It's much more calm. It is much more stable and mature. Why? How do you get second light? Here's how you get it. You get it by earning it. First light does not last because you did nothing to earn first light. You see this girl from across the room, you didn't do anything. What did you do? Did you Did you sit by her bed when she had a disgusting cold and pick up her tissues? Did you look at your guy when he's kvetching and complaining? Or when he gets the second speeding ticket in a week? You didn't do anything. You did nothing. First light doesn't last because you didn't earn it. Second light can last. You can acquire it, but you have to earn it. So now we're putting together rules. I don't have a blackboard over here, but picture this. First light, beautiful, big, bright, doesn't last. You didn't earn it. Second light, not so beautiful, not so bright, more mature, much more calming, but it could last because you earn it. Okay? We're getting these rules. These are deep Kabbalistic ideas. If you understand this concept, you'll understand why there had to be two sets of tablets. First tablet was called First Light Tablet. It was big, bright, beautiful. Came down, Moshe, thunder, lightning. What happened to the first set of tablets? What happened to the first set of tablets? They broke. It was too bright. It was too much. Second tablets quietly brought down the mountain. They were the ones that lasted. Let me give you another example. This trip. There have been moments on this trip that were truly, truly inspirational. There have been moments, and I'll tell you, and I don't mind saying this on camera, I come on these trips not just to speak and whatever, but I come to recharge myself because I work very hard. I travel every week, and I also need my battery recharged. I'm just human, and there are times that I could be doing all sorts of spiritual things but not feel anything because it's just on cruise control. And I stop and I feel it when I go to the grave of Rachel. And I recharge over here when I come. And there are moments that are really, really, really special. Dancing before Shabbat from the King David all the way to Aish. It was amazing. Wait till you see the video of it. You're gonna marvel that you were part of something so epic. And then tonight, by the banquet, when people get up and they say, Rabbi or Madricha, this trip was so amazing. It was so wonderful. It was so beautiful. I got so much out of it. I'm going to come home and I'm going to, I committed to tzitzit, so I'm going to wear the tzitzit. I'm going to start doing Shabbat. I'm going to start doing this, and I'm going to look at you and I'm going to clap. And in my mind, I'm going to say, honestly, no, you're not. Sorry. You know why? You know why? Because it's first light. All you experienced was first light here. All you got was a choreographed, micromanaged trip. You got a trip where every bit of inspiration was spoon-fed to you. And then you're going to go home, and reality is going to smack you upside the head. You're going to go home, and nobody just experienced going to the Kotel every morning. Nobody experienced Shabbat in Tzvat or Shabbat in Yerushalayim. Nobody was surrounded with inspiration and Torah and so on. So, slowly but surely, all the inspiration that you got is going to it's going to go out like the air out of a tire. It's sad, but that's okay. Because I tell it to you because you should know that you can get it back, but it won't feel the same. You can get inspiration back, Lily, but it's second light that you'll get, not first light. But how do you get it? By earning it. I had this young lady named Allie Gowan, and she was on our trip about 2 years ago, and she said, I went on Birthright, and after Birthright, I was so inspired. It was a secular Birthright, so I was so inspired, I began trying to keep kosher. After Birthright, keeping kosher, she said, yeah, I was so inspired. But then, there was no place to eat kosher near me. There were no kosher restaurants, so eventually I stopped. She said, but I want to continue it after that kibbutz trip. I am more inspired now than I was then. So I told her, Allie, you have to be prepared. Your first light is not going to last. You have to earn second light. What's the point of first light if it doesn't last? Kabbalistically, can anyone think of the logic? Why would God create a world where you've got this crazy inspiration, that first love, that first inspiration, but it won't last? What's the point? If you take a block of wood and you want to gather oil and you pour the oil on top of the block of wood, it'll just drip down the sides. You're not going to gather any oil. So what do you need to do? You take an awl, that's a tool, take an awl, and you bore a hole in this block of wood, and then you can pour the oil in and it'll hold the oil. In that same way, the point of first light is there in order to create a hole for second light. The point of first love is to show you could love this person so much. So now that you're married, now that you got a few kids, now you got the 7-year itch, now that it doesn't seem glamorous, remember how in love you were with the person when you were in love with the person, and aim for that. And the secret is that second light, in a certain way, feels better than first light. Because first light could feel not real. It could feel like it's la la land. It's not real. You can't live like that. But second light, when you notice that the person you married has flaws, and you love them not despite their flaws, but because of their flaws. When you come back after a trip and you don't feel Shabbat in Tzfat or Shabbat in Jerusalem, but you have Shabbat in Orlando, or Shabbat in Indiana, or Shabbat in Gainesville or Arizona, and you don't feel the same, you remember that it's the same God, it's the same holiday, it's the same time, it just happens to be Arizona and not Yerushalayim. And then you work towards acquiring second light. That's the pattern of the universe. Really, I could speak about this for much longer. I'm not going to because we have a lot to do today, but the concept of first light, second light is an incredibly important concept for you to be aware of. First light, big, bright, beautiful, doesn't last. Second light, not so bright, not so beautiful, but it could last. How do you acquire it? You earn it. The last thing I'm going to say about this is the following. Does first light inspiration last until you get second light? Or does first light eventually disappear, and then you are spinning your wheels and always trying to get back first light, right? I'm trying to get back first light. What is the placeholder that holds first light in place so that second light can come? Picture building a castle. I used to live next to the beach when I was young. I lived in Netanya. And we used to build, not castles, we build tunnels. And we would build these tunnels in the sand, and then once in a while a rogue wave would come along that was just a little bit bigger than the other waves, and it would splash to shore, and in 2 seconds, the hole that we built was flooded and filled up, and we were all disappointed. What keeps first light there so that second light can fill it up? Hear the question? The answer is, you do by holding on to something of first light. By holding on to something when you come back, something meaningful. Remember I did the 10 Commandments of marriage at Sudash Lashit? I was doing 10 Commandments. So I didn't do all 10. One of them that I did not do, and I'm going to tell it to you now, it's a commandment of relationships and marriage, is don't break the pattern of your day-to-day, which means the following. If you and the one that you love are fighting, you don't say, well, I'm eating supper in my room. I don't want to sit by you. No, you sit by the same table, you eat that supper, even if you're not talking to each other. You don't interrupt the routine, because the routine is the fabric of your marriage. And if you break that routine, you dissolve the very foundation of your marriage. So don't kick him on the couch like I told you in that story of the girl who cut her hair when I told you the story of my brother. Don't leave the house for a few days. Don't move into a different bedroom. There's a fabric of marriage. That fabric of marriage is the remnant of first light that you hold on to while you wait for second light, second love to take hold. Got that? While I wait for our fight to be over, for our relationship to be strong again, while I wait for that, The placeholder is the routine of the marriage. So don't break that. Okay, so to synopsize, there's a concept called first light, second light. This applies to love. So if you love somebody and it disappears, don't give up on that love. Just be aware that that first light may be gone, and now it's time for the relationship to become more serious. Now it's time to invest a little bit more. It involves the trip as well, right? The inspiration that you got over here, you're going to go home, you're not going to be supported. Very rarely have I met a student who came home and his parents said, yeah, good for you, let's start doing Shabbat. No, they'll say, oh no, they're pulling away from me. Oh no, they don't want to eat my quiche, right? They must hate me. They don't hate you, they don't eat quiche. What would happen if you want to be a vegetarian? Well, they say, oh, I hate me. No, it's a principled thing. So why is it okay if you want to be a vegetarian, but not if you want to keep kosher? We have this double standard, you know what I'm saying? A double standard, but that's how parents are. I told my kids, I want to tell you, I told this to my kids many years ago. I said, if you ever become more religious than me, which they are, I said, I will celebrate that. I'll celebrate you. Why? Because you're on a journey. And I celebrate my kids' journeys. I don't squash their journeys. The bottom line is, you're not going to be supported, but what I tell my students, I finish with this, listen up, I tell my students, it is true, there is a mitzvah to listen to our parents. It's called Kibud Av V'Em. But that mitzvah has certain limits, and the limit that it has, the Torah defines. The same Torah that gives us the commandment says, Es avicha v'esimecha tiro, v'es shabsosai tishmaru ani Hashem. That's how the verse goes, which means honor your parents, but keep the Shabbat. And the commentaries say that what that means is honor them unless they tell you to disobey me. If they tell you, don't listen to me, then all bets are off. But it's a little bit deeper than that. We have two families. It's important to know this. I call them family past and family future. Family past are our parents. They're the family that brought us up until we were 20 or 22 or however old. Most of your life, you're going to spend with family future. And those are your kids and your grandkids and your spouse. And too often, we make decisions that affect family future to satisfy family past. Like the story I told you of my father, if he had listened to my grandmother, she hated the fact that he got into his Judaism after she had dropped it. If he had tried to satisfy family past, then you guys wouldn't be here today because there would be no Akiva trip. And all the rabbis that I was able to affect and train, maybe someone else would have trained them, and I'm not the only guy who could train in a rabbi, but whatever I was able to offer, I wouldn't be able to offer. Don't make decisions about family future for family past. At a certain point in your life, you have to grow wings and fly. And if you want to be an artist and your parents say, that's not a job, be an accountant, would you say, okay, I hate accounting, but I want to make them happy? What about Sarah? Would you do that?
I was about to say, actually, I've had that conversation with my mom.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You know, some of the greatest singers in history, their parents were against them being artists. And I wonder if their parents eventually said, I'm glad you didn't listen because you're now world famous. You're making way more money than you could have made as an accountant. Family future, it affects. So we have 3 minutes. 3 minutes. If anyone has any questions that we did not cover on the trip, I know there's a lot we didn't cover. Nothing personal though.
So if, let's say we go home and we're like, we want to keep kosher, we want to do Shabbat, what if our parents return and say that you're not in family future yet, you're in family past right now, so do this for family past right now?
It's a good question. I want to tell you, I was offered, I guess I'm saying this on camera as well, I was offered about a month ago an incredibly important position in I don't want to say the name of the organization, but a very, very big organization, and I would have been in charge in the United States of teenagers. and they were willing to pay me more than I'm making now, and I wouldn't have had to travel as much. Like, it was a great, great opportunity. And I thought about it, and then I called them and I said no. And the reason that I said no is because I just can't work with teenagers. I can't. I love them, but I can't. You know why? Not because they don't have brains. Some do. I can't work with them because they are under their parents' thumb. And there's no progress that they can make because they go home every day. But you're not that. You are independent people. You're still connected. Your parents may still pay for your schooling, and you still love them. Obviously, I'm not, I honor my parents very, very much. But at least now, you are free in your college or in your post-college career to really do a Shabbat, to make your private kitchen kosher. You can, and you can't when you're 16. And that's why I said no to this position. I can't. I need to work with people who are then transitioning from family past to family future. And you're the transition. And here's the rub. You can't transition after you have family future already, because by then it's too late. You've already chosen your spouse, and your spouse may not be on board. You've got to transition beforehand. That will help you make the choice of who you want to marry and how you want to raise your kids and where you want to live and where you're going to school. That starts now. It doesn't start after you're married. I have people who say, well, I'm going to start doing Shabbat after I'm married. It's too late. Maybe the person who you married doesn't want. Maybe they don't want to do kosher. Now is the time you make your move, because this is where you create your identity. Does that make sense? Once you chose another person, then every decision's got two people with an opinion. Once you choose another person, it happens before. It happens now. You are those people. Any other questions? One last question, anyone?